UK unemployment has risen to a 4-year high. It's now at 4.6% of the UK population. It's one of the toughest markets I've seen. No EU entrepreneur has been able to create a European listed startup with a market cap of more than 100 billion euros in 50 years. The UK is terrible at scaling startups. Welcome everyone to the Vanessa Podcast. Guess who is back? Your girl, Vanessa. I took a 2-week hiatus that was not planned. I traveled to America, so I went to Atlanta and New York, and then when I came back, I got the flu, and then I had to go to Amsterdam a couple of days later. So I'm really sorry that I have not been consistent, but I will make a promise. This is not how I want our relationship to go. I am committed to you, but I literally was bedbound. This time last week, I was really struggling. And then when I was in New York and Atlanta, I just couldn't film. I just did not have the time. It was so much travel. So thank you for sticking with me and bearing with me. I wanted to just, before I get started, I want to ask you for a very quick favor. If you're watching, please click subscribe. Give us a like. It helps more people find our podcast. If you're listening, especially on Apple or Spotify, leaving me a 5-star review means that more people can find our community and learn from our podcast. So thank you for that in advance. What I wanted to do is I wanted to just reset the scene. Some of you may have stumbled on here through a listening platform, or you may have come through YouTube on our Discover feed, for example. So I just wanted to really explain to you what the Vanessa Podcast is. So we are a weekly business and culture podcast that brings listeners the latest news, what's happening in the workplace and business, so that we can make it, one, digestible. There's so much noise out there, but sometimes when we listen to what's happening in the world of business, we don't always understand, like, how does this impact me? So that's what I want to do. I want to break down the latest business news, the latest workplace news, and also culture, break that down to what it means for you. How are you impacted by this? And then from the end of June, I'm going to go into our studio in London. It's a beautiful studio, and I'm going to have in-person interviews. Now, these interviews are going to be with movers and shakers, very influential people in the world of business and culture who are going to share their stories to inspire us, to help us level up. But also, I'm going to have experts, so people who can really help us get better and live the best lives possible. So I'm super excited about this. I want this to be a platform where I can give you the tools to level up both in your life and careers. And that's it. So I hope we achieve our mission. I also wanted to share a bit of background about the name, the Vanessa Podcast. So I was speaking to my friend a few weeks ago, and I think she was well-meaning, and she was saying, you know, your name, your podcast is your name. And that's usually for people who are very famous. So Oprah or Jennifer Lopez, why have you named your podcast the Vanessa Podcast? Shouldn't you link it to your business to tap into your community? And I just want to give you a backstory just in case this is the first time you're here. So I actually started a talk show on YouTube in 2015 called Girls Talk. At the time, there was nothing like it. There wasn't a talk show for British females who were in the millennial generation, and I wanted to create that void. And from 2015 to 2017, we had around 700,000 views on our talk show. So if you are watching on YouTube, you can actually watch some of the episodes. So I have been in this content creation space for a really long time. And then I stopped. I got caught up in business. I got caught up in a lot of comparison. I got demotivated, and I just felt like it was quite expensive to run production days. And I was just really demotivated. And I thought, I need a break. And then I started the After Work Drinks Club in 2017. The After Work Drinks Club is very similar to the Vanessa Podcast, but it kind of was based on the theme of, for me, when I've had the best conversations in my life that have really impacted my business and career, it's been meeting friends and colleagues after work over a drink. And so I called my podcast the After Work Drinks Club because I wanted to bring those conversations onto the podcast. and started it in 2017. There's a bit of a pattern. I did get a bit discouraged, and it's really hard to stay motivated right in this podcasting space. So I did a couple of interviews, not a couple actually. I think I did quite a big chunk, maybe like 10 to 15. And then I just took a break. And then in 2021, I got really, really serious. And so I worked with a good friend. His name is Ryan. And we relaunched the After Work Drinks Club. And it was during the pandemic. So it just blew. So we actually, in our debut week, we entered the Apple business charts at number 4. And we had so many inspiring guests. We had the CEO of Blue Water, who's a good friend of mine, Natalie, and they actually sponsored the podcast. We had my friend Emma Cooper. She is an award-winning film director. We had financial experts who've been on Channel 4, so many inspirational people. And then I just got into the space of where I was on this journey of trying to scale my business, launching my app, going on this horrendous fundraising journey, and my podcast just took a back seat. And I knew I wanted to get back into the podcasting space, but I just felt like, what next? And I actually thought about calling my podcast On the Hill, which was linked to my business. And then I thought, well, what if in a few years' time, I'm in a different place? And I don't want to be tied to something. I felt like relaunching the After Work Drinks Club, because it was very stop, start, would just be, it didn't feel right. And so I thought, if I call my podcast the Vanessa Podcast, it means that I can always change the format. It doesn't have to be, based on a certain thing, and it's very fluid. So I didn't call it the Vanessa Podcast because I'm arrogant. It was just because when I searched the name, the Vanessa Podcast, the handle was free, and there wasn't another podcast that was called the Vanessa Podcast. And I thought, it's a sign from the universe. So that's why. I want to also give you a bit of background about who I am, because some of you might be thinking, well, who the hell are you? Who the helly? What the helly? Who the hell are you? Why should I trust what you have to say around what's happening in business and culture? So let me just introduce myself, like Jay-Z, public service announcement, people. So listen, child, let me break it down for you. I have nearly 20 years of experience working in the financial services, public sector, and also in the legal sector. So my background is I've worked in HR, I've worked in sustainability, I've worked in ESG, which is environmental, social governance. I've worked at companies like HSBC, JP Morgan, I've worked at Barclays, I've worked at Standard Chartered Bank, and I've also worked at UK Parliament. So I saw in terms of the government, the economy, I worked closely with MPs, I worked closely with the Speaker of the House and other departments. So I know how the UK government is run. I know how the economy is managed, and I've got a lot of experience there. I also have a lot of experience in how global businesses are run. In my remit, I was responsible for strategy in 70 countries. That impacted over 70,000 employees, but all of the customers worldwide. So I feel like I am a credible voice in terms of breaking down what's happening in the world of business. I'm also a founder and entrepreneur. So whilst I was working in these companies, I also had a side hustle called Girls Talk, and I recently launched The Hill. I've been a full-time entrepreneur since 2021. And I've got a global community of 60,000 women, and it's growing. And I've worked with companies like Meta, Snapchat, Goldman Sachs, who've been some of our clients. And I've delivered programs, consulting, events that they sponsor, and just having them on board and understanding what they look for and getting, partnerships off the ground. Completely bootstrapped. I raised a little bit of angel investment in 2023, but I'm a bootstrapped entrepreneur. So I really understand that founder life journey, but also what it's like to be an employee. So take it from me, you are in safe hands, okay? I feel like this podcast is needed now more than ever. I feel like the podcasting space is very saturated. And I also feel like there is a need for the voice of a Black woman in this space. We need more women leading podcasts that talk about business and the economy and the workplace and, culture, but also more Black women. And I remember when I hit number 4 in the business charts on Apple, it was Stephen Bartlett, of course, the GOAT. He was number 1, but everyone else, the second and third was like, white people. A white lady was number 3rd. And then second was 2 white men. So I understand that there needs to be more voices in this space. And that's what drives me to keep growing this podcast. So hopefully you'll come on the journey with me and let's see where we can take this. I'm also going to change the format of the show a little bit. So I'm going to do half of it around what's going on in the world of business, my takes, what this means for us, you and I. And then I'm going to introduce a new series called Founder Diaries, where I'm going to take you behind the scenes, child, of what is going on in this crazy world of running two businesses. It's not easy. And I want to take you behind the scenes. If you're building something, you could be a person that has a side hustle. You're thinking about earning extra income. I've got you. I'm going to be sharing how I built my business, ups and downs, and my learnings. And I'm going to put this in the episode as well. So I hope you enjoy. So first up, I just want to acknowledge I'm recording this on the Thursday. It comes out on the Monday. And it's been on my mind all day around the Air India plane crash. So there was a plane, a 7878 Dreamliner Boeing that was carrying 242 people. And there were 53 British nationals on there and 169 Indian nationals. And apparently, so far, there's at least 200 who have been killed. It crashed in a residential building, so there were some civilian injuries. It crashed literally, I think, around 30 seconds after takeoff, and we're still getting breaking news. Apparently, one British passenger survived, but that's still being investigated. And honestly, guys, my hearts go out to all of the family, all of the friends, all of the loved ones of the passengers on the plane, and my heart goes out to the souls that were on that plane. If anyone knows me, I am so scared of flying. It is unreal. Like, I am petrified. I just get nervous. I am just a mess internally. Sometimes you can't tell it, but if you're sitting next to me on a plane, I'm literally like in despair. I hate it, but I love traveling. And this is my biggest fear. And so I just kept thinking, these poor people, like, especially during takeoff. So I recently came back from Amsterdam with my two best friends, and like, they were just like, oh, here she go again. But it's scary, guys. It's so freaking scary, especially during takeoff. And I'm just thinking about these people and how much fear they must have had. So just thinking of them. And I'm sure by the time my podcast comes out on Monday, there'll be more updates. Okay, so my first story comes from the Financial Times, and it's around UK unemployment. So UK unemployment hits a 4-year high as pay growth cools. So I'm just going to get you all up to speed. So according to the FT, they've said that UK unemployment has risen to a 4-year high. And this is due to, in April, we had steep increases in a couple of things. So in payroll taxes, so how much employers pay in national insurance contributions, and also the minimum wage was increased. And so that has really stopped a lot of, especially SMEs, so small, medium enterprises, from growing and recruiting because it's getting expensive to recruit people. And the data shows this. So employers cut the number of payroll staff by 55,000. And this was between March and April. And they said that, for May, they said that they showed a month-on-month drop of 109,000 roles, which is crazy. And many of these roles were in hospitality and retail. So vacancies are falling. And so the number of people who are claiming unemployment is at an all-time high. So the number of people claiming jobless benefits rose, and the unemployment rate obviously will rise. It's now at 4.6% of the UK population are unemployed. And that is just really sad. This has affected the market. So the pound fell against the dollar. And they said that, essentially what they're saying is it's a really challenging market to find a job. And they're saying that private sector pay growth has also weakened as well in the UK. But they said that the jobs market is not collapsing, but they're saying most indicators show labour demand is clearly weakening. So what are my thoughts? And I want to break this down into what this means for you, okay? What this means for us is if you are looking to move, or if you've recently graduated, or maybe you're looking for a new job, maybe you've been made redundant, or maybe you've been let go, or maybe you voluntarily, you've left. It's a very peak market out there. And when I mean peak, AKA, it's very challenging and tough. It's one of the toughest markets I've seen. So in my work, we previously did a lot of work to help companies hire talent, especially female talent. And I saw a decline in the number of vacancies a lot of companies were hiring, especially in tech and finance, but also just the scale and pace. So during the pandemic, 2021, especially in tech, there was a massive surge in hiring. Companies were hiring like the lights were going to go out tomorrow. Like it was so intense. And we had a lot of demand, right? And then I noticed that in 2022, some of our partners, so these were, top 100 businesses in the world, they started to slow down the pace of hiring. And that's what I had noticed and I've seen. And sadly, it's kind of bit by bit gone down. So now a lot of companies, because they invested a lot in growing quite fast in 2021, a lot of companies raised investment, and I'm talking like some of them in the tens of millions. They are now having to give their shareholders a return. So they're now looking at how they can be more efficient and thinking about giving shareholders a return, being more efficient and looking at automation. So it's really now they've grown and now it's like coming down so that it can level off. And what that means for us is there's just less jobs in the market, and that means it's more competition. I think what's been really detrimental is a few years ago, there was a massive push in tech. And I mean, I was part of it. I was telling women, and I still am, tech is the sector where you're going to have loads of opportunities. Girls, get yourself into tech. And everyone was pushing tech. Everybody was pushing coding, but I wasn't, because I could foresee this. One thing I have is very good intuition. I saw a lot of companies pushing coding boot camps and telling everyone to learn how to code. And I remember people were saying, Vanessa, you're just a hater, you're off, you're way off. And I could see this happening, right? I could see that it didn't make sense to me how everyone is going to be a coder. It just did not make sense to me. And I just felt like the bubble was going to burst. I thought people should focus more on like transferable skills that can stand the test of time. And here we are now, coders are being replaced by AI. If you look at previous episodes that I've recorded, Microsoft, for example, and Meta, they are aggressively training AI models to produce all of their code. And what does that mean? If you're a software engineer watching this, your job is on the line. It's not the market for software engineers. You have to pivot fast. I recently hosted a panel for London Tech Week focusing on how we can make sure that underserved communities are not left behind in the advance in AI. And what I said was, I'm very cautious about this because I feel AI is a bit of a hype similar to what we were talking about coding. I think it's important for us to upskill ourselves in AI, but at the same time, we shouldn't all think, I need to become an AI expert to work in AI. It's about how we use the tool rather than trying to move into AI as a sector. So I think be cautious. For me, I'm going to share with you the top skills all of us need to make sure that we are irreplaceable in 2026 and beyond. Okay. The first one is strategy. No matter what, you cannot ask an AI tool to deliver your strategy. So you can ask AI to collate information and maybe write the strategy, but if you can deliver a strategy, you are irreplaceable. So I'll give an example about me. Part of my roles at a law firm, I was head of diversity and inclusion and corporate responsibility. I was responsible for delivering that global strategy in 20 offices. When I moved to an international bank, I was responsible for delivering our global diversity and inclusion strategy across 70 markets. So the strategy was already written when I came, I had it, and I had to think and be creative around initiatives to deliver that strategy. So I had to think about, who are my stakeholders? Who do I need to get on board? Do I need councils? Do I need working groups? Project management? All of those skills. So think about ways in which you can get jobs that get you to deliver a strategy. It could be a communication strategy. It could be an operational strategy. It could even be an administration strategy. Okay. Just think about your sector, and if you can get a role or get some experience in executing strategy and communicating what results and what benefit to the business it has. The next one is around influence. AI cannot take that role, but also it's transferable into many different industries. It's sector agnostic. What are your influencing skills like? Externally, when we're thinking about getting customers to buy, and also internally. How can you make that idiot in that department who's a blocker get on side? If you can do that, you are irreplaceable. The third one is around communication. It's so important that you think about how you are as a communicator, because if you want to, for example, be a leader, how do you communicate a vision and a strategy to your team? How do you communicate to leaders, to employees? Your communication style, is it open, honest? Is it a bit like me, a bit bougetto, a bit humorous? I can be professional, but all of these things. What is your style? What is your communication style? The next one is stakeholder management. How do you manage people? If you can nail stakeholder management, and that's managing different people who are impacted by your business. So your stakeholders could be the community, can be your shareholders, can be your board, can be your executive committee. It can be employees, right? Customers. Stakeholder management. How do you manage different stakeholders and get them to move in one accord? If you can do that, you are irreplaceable. Personal branding. It's something that is so important. My guest is, I don't want to say too much, but when my guest is revealed, it's like the top of the top in terms of like personal branding when it comes to a platform where you are going to be looking for a job, right? Everyone needs to be on their game in personal branding. I don't want to hear, oh, Vanessa, I just want to do the work and get by. Hard work gets you nowhere. 109,000 jobs gone. Hard work gets you nowhere. Okay? Nobody is thinking about you. Okay? Nobody is going to sell you to a new employer, is going to really advocate for you. You are the one that has to do that. If you are shy about putting yourselves out there, you're going to be broke. I'm just telling you the real. I get so passionate about this because I hear this all the time about, oh, I don't want social media. I like to be behind the scenes. You're going to be behind on bills if you don't get with the program. You need to have a personal brand and choose a platform. If you're looking for a job, LinkedIn. If you're trying to do a B2B business, LinkedIn. If you've got a B2C business, TikTok. If you've got a B2C business, Instagram, Facebook. We really need to open your eyes. I'm trying to open your eyes, people. It's getting peak and the pressure is getting worse. You really have to have a personal brand. I'm not saying you've got to be like me and doing a podcast and content creation. That's what I love, being a content creator. I love it, right? You don't have to be like extreme, but you have to have an online voice. You have to have an online presence that is sharing with people who are looking for people with your skill sets, how great you are. Whether that's posting on LinkedIn once a week minimum, just you've got to do it, making sure your LinkedIn looks fire. And I'm going to help you with that. Okay, I'm not going to just cuss you and leave you. I'm going to help you. Stay tuned. But making sure you've got this personal brand that really sells you, because if you don't have these skills, you're going to be left behind. They're going to hire someone who they think, oh, this person's a mover and shaker. They can bring an audience to us, a community. They can bring customers. They can bring clients, You've got to make yourself appear valuable. And also expertise. Expertise. You need to have expertise to show that you are an expert at something. And I'm going to give you an example. So Mark Zuckerberg is spending, and this was out in the news, billions, and he's trying to create a super AI team. So these are like, in terms of globally, like the creme de la creme de la creme of people who are really like, I'm talking founders of like multi-million pound AI businesses, or like some of the top data analysts or data scientists. He said that he is willing to give them 9-figure packages. Child, 9 figures, if you don't know, it's a billion. £1 billion salary package for his super AI team, because some people decided to be an expert in AI. I can't. Lord have mercy. That's how serious it is. So be an expert. And what this means is, in terms of bringing it back now to the UK unemployment increase and growth, it's going to be harder to find a job. And what we need to do is, I think we need to work more harder on getting prepared for it to take longer to find a role, and also be prepared for redundancies that could be coming. So get your savings in order. I've spoken about this before in previous podcasts, but the more I say it, I'm hoping the more it resonates. Get your savings, look at your outgoings, think about what is not a necessity. Do you really need a car? I don't have a car no more. I could see this. Remember, I keep saying to you guys, I can see things coming a mile off. I could see this year happening, right? And then I just thought, you know what, let me just really focus on building my savings, building my investments. And I thought, do I need a car living in London? No. So I got rid of my car. So really think about, is a car a nice to have or a necessity? And I understand some of you might need a car, but do you need to order a takeaway every week? Can you cook? Can you stay at home, 2 weekends and then go out 2 weekends? There are loads of free things to do. Like, really think about your expenses. And also thinking about two things. Industry networking is really, really important. Think about how you can build your own connections. 70% of roles are not advertised. So they're done by people recommending, saying, oh, I'm looking for this person. Do you know anyone? So really get your networking up. And I would say upskill yourself. Think about new skills. I've shared with you the skills that you need. So strategic skills, influence, communication, stakeholder management, personal branding, being an expert. Now think about how you can upskill yourself in these things. Okay, so my next story is around Europe's inability to scale startups. So the Financial Times again said that no EU entrepreneur has been able to create a European listed startup with a market cap of more than 100 billion euros in 50 years. And I've mentioned this before in previous podcasts. The number of companies, especially in the UK, that have listed on the stock exchange has literally dwindled. It's flatlined. And they've said that SAP, which was founded in 1972, was the last company to reach such commercial highs. You've got other success stories like Spotify's a European startup. They've got a market cap of around 124 billion euros, and they're listed in the US and also in Europe. But they're saying that there's a big problem around Europe being not able to really scale startups. And I've been saying this, and I was saying this, and we were talking about this actually on my panel at London Tech Week, that the UK is terrible at scaling startups. They are terrible in investing in startups. They are terrible in taking risks, and I'm not surprised. And I think we need a culture shift in the UK and Europe. The founder of Monzo, Tom Bloomfield, spoke about this a few years ago. He was saying, look, I'm leaving the UK. So Monzo is multi-billion pound challenger bank. And when he started the idea, he went to people in the UK and obviously in Europe. And what did they say to him? Oh, it's a bit risky. You're trying to compete with the Barclays and HSBCs. Oh, if I was you, it's not going to work. It's too risky. Typical UK and European attitude, And then told the US investors that he was speaking to about his idea, and the reaction was different. This is amazing. Let me connect you to X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, E. That's the attitude. It's let me help you make this wild dream come true. If Europe and the UK, if we want to really innovate, we've got to get a grip. We have to start thinking big. And I was saying about this to a few friends this week. I'm seeing it now in my business in terms of the risk appetite. Now I wouldn't look for investors in Europe and the UK. I would look to Middle East and to America. Despite the madness that's happening over there, I still think that's a really important market. And I feel like, especially in Germany, it's one of my markets. I just feel like in Europe especially, it's not a market for consumers or consumption because people don't really invest in themselves. So an example is if you look in the US, they will invest in great holidays. I mean, in the US, let me just take it back. They pay for their own healthcare. They don't have that many benefits that we have in Europe, for example. So in America, the sick pay is very basic. if not non-existent. You don't get that many benefits. So you have to have this hustler's mentality. It's like fight or flight. Whereas in Europe, we have a lot of benefits. We're a big benefit system, especially in Germany. If you lose your job, you get paid your full salary for a year. Where they do that at? So then when you're trying to build a market for consumers to invest in themselves, whether that's, what I do, for example, I have a membership community. It's a harder sell. Private members clubs don't do well there. Luxury hotels flop in Germany because there's just not that culture of really treating yourself and investing in yourself. And also I've seen that luxury hotels in Europe is a really stagnant market compared to luxury hotels in the Middle East, even in Africa and even in the US. Bigger market there because people, they're hustlers, they're getting their income up, but they're also not ashamed to invest in themselves. So if you're starting a business, for example, like a Spotify, somebody paying £10 a month in the US or China or Middle East, they're like, cool, got it, understand. In Europe, we're like, £10 a month. I don't know. Let me think about it. £10 a month. If it's Netflix, they'll be like trying to find somebody who's got a Netflix account or trying to use someone's Spotify. Like this appetite for consumers is just not here in Europe. So if you're starting a business, and I can see why it's difficult to scale. How do you scale in a market where people are not used to spending, essentially? So I think we have to do two things. It's just think about moving. For me, as a founder, I'm thinking about moving. I'm really tired of the UK. I want to leave. I want to leave yesterday. And I know that South Africa is not for me. I've spoken about this before, but I really want to think about the Middle East for me or America. And to all my founders out there, I've said this before, we need to think elsewhere. We cannot think about Europe. If you have big dreams, if you're someone and you feel like there's something bigger for you out there, run. And run from Europe is what I mean. I think also for employees, if you have dreams of working for a really great company that's going to grow and scale, Europe and the UK is not it. Look for companies in the Middle East. Look for companies in America. And what you can do is offer yourself. Get your foot in the door. So remote work still exists. You can set up a side hustle in your area of expertise. Start researching, top 100 startups in Dubai, top 100 startups in Saudi Arabia. Reach out to them. Find those that you feel passionate about that are in your industry that excite you. Find the founders on LinkedIn or find their chief growth officer on LinkedIn and just think about how you can fit and say, look, if you've got any projects, if I can add value, whether it's having a call or can I just speak to you, get yourselves in there, shoot your shot, but just get out if you have big dreams. Now, if you can show your value, then you can say, look, I've shown I've loved helping you unblock this roadblock. I've loved getting to know you. I'm interested in moving to Dubai. If you get any opportunities, I'd love to chat more. So it's just shoot your shot. And if you're happy in the UK and in Europe, congratulations. I'm going to keep my last story very short and sweet. Rachel Reeves, who is the UK Chancellor, has said that she found it disappointing to see the UK economy has shrunk by 0.3%. So it was quite shocking that the economy is just shrinking and shrinking and shrinking until it's like just stagnant. It's crazy. What does this mean for us? As I've mentioned before, fewer jobs. Sadly, because it's not growing, businesses are not growing and there's no opportunities, it means fewer jobs. It means that there's going to be fewer experiences. So fewer concerts, fewer art exhibitions, fewer extracurricular activities. I think it's going to be quite sad times. There's not going to be a lot of development in city centres because, it's just, she's got a lot of cuts going on as well. She released a new budget in terms of the government department spend. And again, it's a lot of cuts. And so it's just going to be a really dark time in the UK. There's not going to be much to do, I think, or much new things to do. When you think about festivals or new projects, art, it's just going to be very stagnant. It's going to be harder to get loans, to get credit, to get a mortgage. I can see the housing market getting more difficult, more challenging. I can see house prices being quite stagnant. And I think inflation might increase, although the Monetary Policy Committee have been cutting the interest rates to make it easier for those who are, have credit or have mortgages. But if inflation increases, the interest rates might increase. And so, again, what it means is reviewing our finances, as I mentioned before. And also, it's just really sad. I feel like we've had 15 years of austerity, 15 years of hell since the Conservatives came into power, messed up everything. Labour have come in and it seems like Labour are struggling. It seems either Labour has a tough job or Labour just don't know what to do. And I think 2026 will show if Labour just wasted 15 years, complaining and not really getting themselves together. I would have hoped that Labour spent all of that time getting their ideas together and so that they could kind of implement, or is it just change takes a long time? I'm hoping it's the latter, but I think it's getting frustrating. It's too much. And I also think it's been 5 years since COVID-19, since the pandemic, and it's just shit. And I'm sorry to swear, but it's just annoying. It's like doom and gloom. It's getting to my mental health, and I'm sure it's getting to a lot of people's mental health. I'm fed up of the UK being so depressing and just so useless. The UK is a useless girl, and I'm just fed up of her. And I think now is the time to think about side hustles and having multiple streams of income. You cannot rely on just having one job, and that's me included. So I'm looking at content creation. I'm really trying to get myself up as a content creator on YouTube, on my socials. I've got my businesses, but I'm also thinking about other ways to make money. And so if you have a job, think about other ways to make money. Employers, you need to give your employees the grace and accept that everyone is going to have a side hustle because you're not paying people enough. You're not increasing wages. The cost of living is high. We have to have more than one job. The idea that someone is going to be working for your company 24/7 committed is ridiculous in this market. And I remember when I was working at UK Parliament, I'm going to say, I don't care. My two managers there, one of them was very jealous when she found out I had a side hustle. And my side hustle was Girls Talk and I was getting awards. And she bullied me, harassed me. She made my life a living hell because she was jealous that I had a side hustle. And both of them were just nasty women. And I'm talking about this now because I just feel like, you know what, let me just say and be honest. And it was all because I had a side hustle. She tried to make excuses to say that I was breaching policy when I wasn't, and just making up lies about me. And she had told me, she was like, oh, I saw that you're the CEO of like Girls Talk. And I was very open to people that I was, and she was jealous. And so I think that people, especially managers, stop being jealous of your colleagues. Get your own side hustle. And if you don't have a side hustle, that's your choice. But don't penalize your employees for having a side hustle. I remember when I went to my next employer, which was a large international bank, my manager, the one thing that literally one thing that she was good at was I told her about my business and she was like, I don't care. She was like, get it signed off by this team, but whatever you do outside of work, fine with me. Just do your job. I understand everyone has different things going on. She was saying like, I am sit on boards. I'm a venture scout. I do X, Y, and Z. I'm an author. I'm a speaker. I get paid for it. Girl, get your coins. We need more managers like that because if the economy is shrinking, people need to start thinking about a side hustle. And let me tell you something. There is no shame in your side hustle being an Amazon delivery driver, being a delivery driver after hours, or being an Uber driver. I think we need to get rid of the shame and the stigma of people doing these types of side hustles. There's no shame in that. And I want to make that clear. You do what you have to do to have a good life, to have a good holiday, and even if to get by. Do what you have to do to get by, even if your side hustle is working at Lidl. There is no shame. Think outside of the box as well. Hi guys, so I've just finished recording the official pod in the studio and I just want to create a new series called Founder Diaries. It'll be very quick, short and sweet, every episode, just to give you a bit of behind the scenes in terms of the journey in being a founder. and also just sharing some knowledge and insights on my journey so far, because I feel like if you're building something, whether you are working and you've got a side hustle, or maybe you're thinking about starting your own business and you think it's all glitz and glam, I'm here to tell you the real and just share my lessons, the good, the bad, the ugly, and also in real time what I'm working on right now. So I thought a good place to start would be, okay, how did I grow a global business that has worked with clients like Meta, Goldman Sachs, Snapchat, HSBC, Vodafone, working with some of the world's largest companies in tech and finance? How have I done it as a Black girl who grew up in Essex, went to state school educated? Like, how have I managed to do this? I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. I didn't have connections. I didn't have anyone opening doors for me. I had to kick down these doors. And so it's been really, really tough, but I've managed to break through. And I just want to share some insights on how you can do it too. I mean, when I think back to my journey, so I started my first business, Girls Talk, in 2013. And what I will say to you is, if you're going to start up a business, try not to just copy what you think looks cool. You might see this girl or guy or non-binary and you feel like they are the business, they're looking good, they're getting accolades, this looks fun, this looks cool, this looks sexy. And you think, oh yeah, I want some of that. And you just copy someone's idea because you think it's on trend. That is not the way to start a business. When I set up Girls Talk in 2013, let me tell you, I set it up because one, I'm a girl's girl. So I was looking for like events where I could just hang out with like-minded women and have some girl chat. And I just was looking and I couldn't really find anything in London. And then I was trying to look for female empowerment groups. There was a community which my good friend, her name's also Vanessa, runs, called We Are the City. But We Are the City was very much like city focused. And it was for women who were very much like further along in the journey than say I was. So they were doing amazing stuff, but I felt that there was a gap for, like women my age, up and coming, who wanted to speak to role models. So when I started Girls Talk 2013, it was to fill a gap. And so we started to host events where I would bring women together with senior women in the city through panel events. And at the time, there wasn't that many panel events as well for women. So we were kind of like quite disruptive at the time with our name. We were originally called Girls Talk London, and we just started to do events. And what I will say is I built this outside of my day job, and it was built on pure passion. I remember our first event, it was January 2013, and it was a snowstorm. And I thought, oh my God, I've worked so hard to put on our first event and nobody will come. Our speakers braved the storm. We invited like schoolgirls as well to come along for our first event. And I remember with my work wives, Anu and Rosa, they came with me to like the Waitrose that was in the city, which was like down the road from our office. And we got this trolley, which we had to take. It was the London Museum that agreed to give us the space for free. And we were going to buy like 30p, like orange juice cartons and like just biscuits. That's all I could afford. And we had this debate on should we like spend 50p on custard creams or like 23p on digestive biscuits. And Rosa always says to me, Vanessa, custard creams, don't forget like where you came from. And it's been such a journey. So I did a lot of our events for free. I made it free for girls to attend and I paid out of my own pocket just because I wasn't sure what I was building. But I knew I was building something and I was very passionate about it. So I was just going on passion and making a difference. And I thought I'll figure out how to make money next. But I know what I'm doing is going to fill a gap. And that's my sort of main takeaway to you is you have to be passionate about what you're doing and there has to be a gap. So don't just think about what's out there. Just if you feel like, oh, I'd love to run my own business, what I would say to you is read, explore, go to lots of events and then wait to get inspired. You'll know in your gut when you're like, there's a gap for what I'm doing and then just go for it. And that's always been the case for me. And I think what's annoyed me is I am someone that's very innovative. I'm creative and I think of ideas. I set up my talk show 2015. Again, there was nothing like what I produced out there. And again, we were copied by people who had bigger followings than us. And we were kind of just like for a little bit outplaced in the market. But what people can't deny is we were one of the first to do what we do or what we did. And so I've always been someone who's innovated. And I think what can get a bit frustrating for me is when my industry becomes saturated, as all industries do. And that's when I kind of look at the art of the pivot. And again, when I started a summit called the Black Girls Tech Summit 2019. There wasn't an event like ours for Black people in tech in general. And so, again, we were creating a gap. And then what's happened now, you've got other festivals that are supporting Black women in tech and Black people in tech. But we were one of the first to do it. And I think that's something that I'm really proud of, even though it can be frustrating, because I think where my weakness is, if I'm honest, is sometimes with my network. So I've got a really good idea. Somebody maybe with a stronger network or access to more capital will copy me, and then they kind of dominate the market. So I think be innovative, but also make sure that you kind of build your network of key decision makers and people who have really big influence in your sector, so that when you go in, you can dominate quickly. That would be my key takeaway. And again, with podcasting, I was doing podcasting when it wasn't as saturated as it was now, but I just kind of got a bit frustrated about the cost of podcasting at the time. And so I just thought, I can't be asked. And I wish I continue, because I would have been podcasting for like 8 years now, and who knows where I would be. But don't cry over spilt milk. Just take the lessons learned. And I've kind of started my podcast again because I just love it. And I still feel like there's room for a voice like mine. So what I would say is, if you're building something, and whatever it is, have the passion, but be prepared to do it for free. A lot of people are thinking about money these days. And yes, you have to be paid for what you're doing. But if you're building, there's going to be a phase of at least, I would say I did not make any money, like not a penny, until like 2 years after I started Girls Talk. That's a long time. So I was pouring my own money. And you have to be prepared to work day and night. My mum will tell you, I worked weekends. Every Saturday and Sunday, I was working on building Girls Talk, thinking about our events, building our social media, like just really being excited and passionate about my business. And I think that's something that you have to be prepared. You can't just think you're going to start a business and everyone's going to pay you. There's going to be a time when you are working for free. And I would say, really think about that. Think about, can you afford to do that? Because it's not going to be instantly about money. You have to start creating value, because when you're doing your stuff for free, you're creating, whether it's a product-based business, you're creating client testimonials, reviews, and you might have to give your product away for free to some customers, to some influencers, to get reviews, to then get, the case studies, to get people to want to buy. You can't just think you're going to put your product on Amazon with no reviews, no community, no backing, no nothing, and then expect it to sell out. You've got to kind of invest the time to kind of build from the ground up. So really, really think about that. So I think my Founder Diaries kind of takeaway is, even now with my podcast, I'm starting again, but I'm being serious about being a podcaster and content creator. I'm investing in myself. I haven't got yet like sponsorships. I'm just thinking, okay, I've got to invest in myself, right? And so I'm putting my own money into it. I'm putting in hours that are not paid for, because I really believe in what I'm doing. And I know that to build something, I've built something before. It could be a year, 2 years where I'm still investing in it and I'm not seeing a return. I remember when I gave up, like so many times with my talk show and the podcasting, so many times, because it's just so resource intensive. You're putting in a lot of money, and I was like giving up. And I wish I had this kind of diary moment to speak life into myself. So I'm kind of speaking to myself and you when I say, don't give up in the early days. Be prepared to invest blood, sweat and tears for at least 2 years before you even see £1. And I remember the first time we got paid any money was from St. Paul's Cathedral. They wanted to donate to us. We weren't a registered business at the time, but they were like, what you're doing is amazing. We used to partner with St. Paul's Cathedral to do events, and they loved us. And they were the first to give me some money. It was for £114. And I'll never forget it. So there will be a time when people are watching what you're doing. They can see you're building. It just takes one to kickstart this amazing flow of income. So stick in there. So I hope you've enjoyed my little sneak peek of my Founder Diaries. I'll be back next week with some more gems for you, hopefully. Okay, everyone, time has gone by so quick. We've come to the end of the Vanessa Podcast. Thanks for listening or watching. Don't forget, subscribe, Share this episode with someone who you think it may help, and I'll see you again next week.